Hello, can everybody hear me? Thank you very much for this nice introduction. Like she said, I moved back to Iceland a couple of years ago and started working for Valka, where I'm currently a product manager. I've been a developer before, and a little bit about Valka. We create machines that are used in fishing industry to maximize the value of the fish and try to beat marel. So no small task there, and now I'm going to talk about ShapeUp, hopefully convince you that there are alternatives out there. A long time ago, me and my brother, we put together a computer where I installed Linux and I had to use some text editor, and we chose Vim, and then when I learned to use Vim, hoping for some cool points here. But about 10 years later, Stack Overflow was really popular, and this question became the highest rated question on Stack Overflow. People really didn't know how to quit Vim. It's really amazing that people start using Vim as their editor even today, but I think that's a topic for another talk. And when I was preparing this lecture, I came into this parody of how to quit Vim without doing the correct thing. For example, just walking away or turning off your computer might be easier, but if anyone saw the loose lips sink ships before, I became happy sad when I saw this. So now I'm a product manager, and this is the product manager way of quitting Vim. You create a Jira issue, you put some estimate on it, you schedule it, assign it to a random team member, you demo it, see, I quit Vim, and then you schedule the retrospective. As I said, this is quite a happy, sad moment. I thought this was pretty funny, because we tend to do this for every single task we do in Scrum. Now, there are a lot of challenges doing software development. Projects drag on, features take longer and longer to get out the door, and as product manager and non-developers, I would say, don't have a lot of time for strategic work. And I believe one of the issues is that we have so many aspects of software development that we want to accomplish today. I'm behind all of these things. I really like them a lot, but when you split a big feature into very small tasks and you pad them with every aspect of these, things just start to take longer time. And for developers as well, you're working in a ticket-taking system where you just have a pretty well-described task. This is what I'm going to do next. And it feels kind of like you have a Lego set that you're just applying 5 or 6 pieces. And then when you put the final pieces, you don't feel a lot of accomplishment because it's just a few pieces that you added. Now, I went on summer holiday like most of you last year, and I read this book from Basecamp, written by Ryan Singer. For those who know Basecamp, they've released several books as well that are gaining ground in Iceland. I'm really hoping forward to everyone adopting their philosophies. It doesn't have to be crazy at work, and Remote are several books that are becoming really popular now. And essentially, this book is free. You can start reading it in 20 minutes when I'm finished. Really easy read. And it's kind of 2 books in one. First, it's a book about fundamental truths about software development. It's going to teach you some vocabulary on how to better tackle the risks and how to deliver software. It's also going to teach you how to use ShapeUp at your company. Now, this is really, really new. You can see it's a 2019 edition. It was released in 2019, so it's relatively new, but a really exciting thing, in my opinion. One of the the base principle of ShapeUp is the cycles. They are a little bit like sprints, but As you will find out, not exactly like that. And as a developer, I'm in cycle in the below area where I'm building a project I'm working on. And when I'm finished building the project, we have a cool-down period. This period is for the developer to work on what he or she deems appropriate at the time. So the developer chooses what tasks to work on. Developers are very close to the application, they're very close to the source code, so they have plenty of ideas of what needs to improve. At Valka, we had one developer that knew that our users didn't have the latest, best hardware to run our application, so they spent our cooldown period to improve loading speeds, 60%. I was really happy about that. It was a lot of improvement. Developer was really happy because it was his idea and his little project, and the users will be, of course, very happy. And this is something that I wouldn't necessarily prioritize until it becomes a problem. So it was meaningful work, but he got to choose what he was working on. In the meantime, I'm working on shaping the projects. I'm going to talk about that into what is called the pitch. The pitch is the document that describes a project, a problem, that is going to be used for developers to do their work. Now, when I talk about shaping the work, we have to find the correct level of abstractness. You see, developers are really smart, so if we keep things too concrete, we have essentially solved the problem for them. A wireframe is a good example of that, where you have laid out specifically how the solution should look like without maybe consideration into other parts of the system, and you hand it over to the developer, but you want his expertise at the same time, so you say, don't do exactly like this very, very concrete thing that I gave you, something similar, but you're not that. But you already polluted the developer's mind at that point. So he's going to be heavily influenced. On the other end, it's abstractness. Words and words alone are just too abstract. We can have a description of a feature that will have as many interpretations as the developers that read it. So, for an example, if I have a feature for a banking application where I want to be notified as a homeowner each time my mortgage is overdue. Now, that sounds like a specific description, but how am I going to be notified? Is it going to be in-app push notifications, email, text message, a letter? Can I snooze the application? For how long? And what developers or homeowners are asking for this? Is it the ones that always pay on time? Is it the ones that don't pay at all? So there are a lot of unanswered questions when we use words alone. So we need some pictures. And the book goes into two techniques mainly. One is called breadboarding. And those that have an electrical engineering background will have some relation there. It goes into defining the affordances, the actions, and the data of a certain feature. So all we're doing is we're specifying where in the system we're going to do things, how we get to the next point, and what data is going to be available. This is a very helpful way for the developer to realize where this feature belongs to and what should be possible. The other one is called Fat Marker Sketches. This is a very simple tool, but we need to put a name to the simple tools for us to remember to actually implement them. Now we take a fat marker and we sketch, and because it's a fat marker, we can't put a lot of detail into it. And this will give the developer, the front-end developer, an idea of how to solve it with enough room for creativity and adjustments if needed. Now, I think a lot of people here have heard the idea, wouldn't it be cool if we could, or how about if we do this? And these are the raw ideas that need shaping. How valuable is it for us? How excited are we for it? Might be super excited, we might be hesitant to do some work. And this needs to be tempered down with boundaries. So we try to figure out how much appetite we have for the problem. Now the appetite is described with fixed time and variable scope. This is where you flip your conceptions about Scrum on its head. In Scrum and the other parts, we have a design. We've solved the problem, we have come up with how it should work, and then we try to estimate it. Don't you just love estimates? They never hold. So in ShapeUp, we allot a fixed time. How much time are we willing to invest in this project? And then we come up with the design afterwards. This fixed time period is going to work as a constraint on what solution we can come up with. If you're working for 6 weeks, you're going to be able to do a lot more than in 2 weeks. And, well, you might say, if we don't do everything we can think of, is the solution really good? Perhaps, perhaps not. But we have to remember, there is no absolute correct definition of a best solution. You can only judge how good a solution is relative to the time and effort you spend on it. If I'm really hungry, like most of you are, I'm very grateful to get the spot right before lunch. You might have the best food you've ever had at a 3-star Michelin restaurant with a 10-course meal. Might be the best. But if you're in a hurry to get to the airport, a sandwich is a much better choice. So in that context, the money you want to spend and the time you have, you might have a better solution. Now, we need to be aware of all the rabbit holes that are present within a certain project. We need to take some time and look into the risks of doing a certain project. And then there might be something that is so obvious for us that we don't want to commit to now. We consider them as no-goes. Something that doesn't fit right now, but might be something we add on later. So these are the uncertainties that we need to work through on paper, whiteboard, without committing any time to development, to be able to say, watch out for this, don't spend too much time on this because you're gonna fall into the rabbit hole. And this is one thing that I have adopted differently from the book, is that because I'm the only one at Valka doing ShapeUp right now, is that I choose the team. Now, I have a pool of developers on our project, our application, and I mix the teams from each project they're working on every time. So you might not be working with the same person next time. And that's so I can choose the persons that are most appropriate for a single project. For example, in this exercise, I've not tried it yet, it might be more beneficial to select a shorter man at the third place, or maybe a taller woman to spread out the load. And this is extremely beneficial, especially with new hires or people that you want to become acquainted with a part of the system, that you can pair them up with people that are more senior and more experienced. And that's everything in the pitch. We have worked out the problem, which is really important to have in the pitch. You need to know what problem you're solving. We know how excited we are, how many resources we're going to spend on it. We know how we're going to solve it. We know of all the risks, and we've outlisted the risks and who's going to be working on it. Ideally, within a shape-up organization, product managers are creating these pitches, but in theory, anyone can do it. It would be very beneficial if a head of service would create a pitch project that they want to work on. A developer can write a pitch. And then we come to the betting table. As I said, I'm the only one at Valka, so I'm the only one that gets to bet. But those people that are in control of how developers spend their time now bet on these pitches. We have a multitude of pitches that can be worked on. And the term here is deliberate, because we all know projects can fail, and in ShapeUp you have a hard deadline of 6 weeks, or for Valka 4 weeks. And if the project hasn't been deployed by the end of this time, we failed. Now, ShapeUp and Basecamp, they have what is called the circuit breaker, where a project doesn't get an automatic extension, because they want to review and figure out what has gone wrong. Now it's time for kicking off. We take the whole team. We have a short-ish meeting. 2 to 3 hours for 4 to 6 weeks of work, where the developers ask questions and everyone gets a common understanding of the problem and the solution. This is where the developers start writing down their imagined tasks. Imagined tasks are all the things that spring to mind when you are asked to do some things. You have to modify the database. You have to add a new page. All the obvious bits. Everything you can think of before you start to work. And I think a lot of us here know that scope grows like grass. And that's just the nature of the work we're doing. We don't know how much work there is because we haven't done this before. Now, that's the whole idea about how the scope grows. You can't know all of the things that you need to do until you start working on it. And it's funny to look back now, but Apple didn't have a copy-paste function on their first iPhone. And that's an example of a great scope-cutting exercise where how am I supposed to copy the telephone number? Wait until second version. And this is where the developers have the freedom to choose what scope should be cut. They have to answer for themselves. Is this important? What happens if we don't deliver this? Can we solve the problem without doing that? And remember, cutting scope isn't cutting quality. This has been quite a journey for me. We started ShapeUp last summer. And when I started as a developer, the Scrum and Agile things were industry standard. Everyone paid a lot of money for a lot of courses to be Scrum certified. And when we tried it out, because obviously I wasn't going to throw my team into this without at least just trying it out first, we kept asking, do we want to continue on this road? And every time the answer was yes. They are really happy about this, and I as well. So I want to leave you with a couple of things that are really important, no matter if you're doing Scrum or ShapeUp, that try to find the correct level of abstractness. You have a lot of power in your developers. Try to find the correct solutions to the problems by thinking hard on the problem you're working on. And as I said, with the developers, they are really creative. We are working with bits, zeros and ones, and logic, and some of us can be pretty dry. But we are creative. Or you guys, developers are really creative. They come up with really good solutions. give them the variable scope to figure out the best solution that fits within the area that they're working on right now. So if you have any questions or want to learn more about ShapeUp, you can reach out to me, and I want to thank you for listening.
Thank you, Tómas, and thank you all for coming.